In the beginning, the entire planet's temperature suddenly dropped to minus 60 degrees Celsius, pushing the whole world into a brutal ice age. Everything on Earth, humans, trees, plants, animals, and even birds, froze solid and turned into ice. But for those who somehow managed to survive these conditions, warmth and food became the most precious things left in the world. South Korea had turned into a frozen jungle where life could barely continue. At first, the remaining survivors tried to stay together and help one another, believing that cooperation was their last hope, but that belief didn't last long. Soon, they realized there simply wasn't enough food or resources for everyone to survive. Slowly, the narrow corridors of apartment buildings turned into battlefields, where people began fighting each other just to live one more day. Yet in the middle of all this destruction, there was one boy, Hanfeng. While the outside world was collapsing into chaos, he remained completely calm inside his heat-protected, heavily fortified base, without even a trace of fear. Surrounded by piles of food and even beautiful women, because in truth, Hanfeng is a regressor, someone who was given a chance to return from his life before the apocalypse. And this time, he didn't just come back by luck, but returned fully prepared, having planned everything in advance to survive the coming disaster. And on top of that, he awakened strange powers that allow him to duplicate food and even increase the size of objects. And Hanfeng doesn't stop there, because as time goes on, he builds an even stronger shelter, equipped with heating systems, greenhouses, and even a sauna. But the real question is, how all of this truly began. So let's go back to the start, when one day, all broadcast transmissions suddenly cut off and a deep, echoing voice replaces them. A voice Hanfeng immediately recognizes because it is calling out to him. And while shivering in the freezing cold, he moves toward the door and peeks through the peephole, only to see that the person outside is actually Hyuna, his crush, trembling violently and barely able to speak from the cold. And without thinking twice, Hanfeng opens the door and rushes her inside, pulling her into the warmth of his shelter just to make sure she is okay. But then something completely unexpected happens, because Hyuna suddenly steps forward and kisses him, freezing Hanfeng in shock and disbelief as she kisses him with overwhelming intensity. And when it finally ends, his reaction is so stunned that he can't even find words, unable to understand why Hyuna, the girl he liked for so long, would suddenly do this. And deep inside, he probably starts feeling like he has just won something huge, almost like life has finally smiled at him. And at that very moment, Hyuna begins to pour out her emotions, saying that she always loved him, and that after living through such a terrifying apocalypse, she finally realized that people like Hanfeng, people who genuinely care about others, are truly rare. And to make her feelings feel even more real, she places his hand on her chest so he can feel her heart pounding rapidly, telling him she is now ready to do anything with him. And this is exactly the honey trap Hanfeng slowly falls into, because his mind sinks into sweet romantic fantasies. And Hyuna moves even closer, rubbing her leg between his as she continues tightening the trap, pulling him deeper until Hanfeng becomes completely lost in the emotions flooding his head. And even then he shares his feelings too, telling her she means everything to him, but that maybe this isn't the right time. Yet Hyuna knows exactly how to manipulate him and gently tells him to close his eyes and just feel the moment. And Hanfeng smiles happily as he obeys, his heart racing with excitement like a child about to experience something new. But then the first kiss of his life suddenly turns into the most painful moment he has ever known, because without warning, someone smashes his head with a heavy object, a brutal blow cracking his skull as blood floods his body. And Hanfeng trembles in agony while Hyuna stands in front of him screaming in fake shock, only for her boyfriend to coldly tell her to stop pretending, since she was part of the plan all along, because the two of them had decided to kill Hanfeng together, believing that in the apocalypse no one truly belongs to anyone. And instead of pity, they feel happiness over the fact that they now get his stash and resources. And the boy who just moments ago was dreaming of a warm future and experiencing the happiest moment of his life now lies motionless in his own blood, fully conscious yet unable to move, with death standing right in front of him as he watches Hyuna celebrate with her boyfriend, realizing that his death was caused by the very girl he loved most. And in those final moments, he swears that if he ever gets another chance, he will never trust anyone again. And as massive blood loss drags him toward unconsciousness, darkness begins swallowing his vision. But within that terrifying blackness, a faint light slowly approaches him, pulling him closer until he believes for a moment that this might be the path to heaven, only for that hope to shatter instantly when his soul arrives somewhere completely different, and his body and spirit are torn into countless pieces in a horrifying experience. And at the end of that nightmare, Hanfeng suddenly jolts awake in his bed, gasping as if he has just escaped a terrible dream, his face drenched in sweat as he looks around in confusion, because only moments ago he was on the brink of death. Yet now everything feels normal, not just for him but for the entire world, with no sign of the apocalypse anywhere, the sun shining brightly outside, and its warmth bringing him a comfort he never thought he would feel again. And when he checks the calendar, he realizes the date is June 28th, even though in the original timeline the apocalypse was supposed to start on July 15th, meaning he has reincarnated after death and returned several weeks before everything begins, leaving his face filled with shock, disbelief, and confusion because he never imagined he would be given life again. But this time he has returned with changes, starting with the strange glow on his his palm because as soon as he wakes up, his hand burns with a red flame-like light, and no matter how much he shakes it, the glow doesn't stop, feeling warm but not burning his skin, making him think for a moment that maybe he has lost his mind until he suddenly sneezes and something even stranger happens as the same hand now glows a bright green, increasing his confusion, and this time he completely loses control as the size and intensity of the glowing flame rapidly increase, leaving him panicked and overwhelmed because not only has he reincarnated but these powers are driving him insane. And as he stands there thinking about this new problem, the green glow slowly begins to shrink, looking entirely different from the earlier red glow, and he collapses into a corner feeling his body's energy dropping dangerously low, realizing that since the green glow activated, his energy has been draining faster than before, and even when he angrily swings his hand through the air, the frustration doesn't fade until suddenly a realization hits him that this situation feels exactly like the manhwa stories he loves, where the hero reincarnates and returns with strange new abilities. And to test this thought, he grabs a knife, hoping for a miracle from his powers, but nothing happens and the blade shows no reaction at all, making him feel ridiculous. And on top of that, hunger crashes over him because the energy loss has left him weak, so he checks the fridge only to find it completely empty, worsening his condition and forcing him to think that if he doesn't eat something soon, he might pass out again. And just then, his eyes land on a shelf where a jar of roasted soybeans sits, a snack that would be extremely useful during the apocalypse. Not a full meal, but enough for now, and he picks up one bean and pops it into his mouth without thinking. But the moment the bean touches his tongue, everything is about to change. The moment the bean goes into his mouth, the glowing green light on his hand suddenly vanishes, and at the same time, all the exhaustion in his body disappears completely, his muscles relaxing as a deep sense of comfort spreads through him, making Han Feng freeze in confusion as he wonders whether this happened because of the soybeans or because his powers reacted to them. And to confirm it, he picks up another bean, breaks it apart carefully, and in that instant, a realization hits him that this might truly be his new ability, leaving him quietly impressed with himself as he decides that he will seriously study and practice this power later, though not right now because before that, there are far more important things to handle since the apocalypse is coming soon and he must stock supplies. And with that thought, he heads straight toward the supermarket, arriving shortly after inside a crowded place full of normal people busy with shopping and casual conversations, making it feel like he has truly returned to ordinary life. Though he remains slightly confused as he thinks about his two glowing hands, the red one being relatively stable, while the green one drains energy heavily, and the strangest part being that when he touched the soybeans, they turned into a proper plant. Yet he still cannot fully understand his ability, and that confusion slowly turns into irritation when suddenly a familiar voice reaches his ears, a voice he never wanted to hear again, Yuna's voice, the same girl who betrayed him cruelly in his previous life, and she is somewhere nearby, this time having already left her ex. Yet the truth remains that any man who stays close to her always meets a terrible end, and seeing her again shocks Han Feng deeply, because she was his crush from 3 years ago, someone he once loved sincerely, for whom he did everything possible to win her heart, yet she never truly treated him as a friend, only as a backup option when no one else was around. And after everything that happened, the betrayal, the murder plan, rage boils inside him until his entire body feels tense. But he is no longer someone who acts blindly, especially now that he has been given a second life, so he forces himself to stay calm and decides that revenge will come later, at the right time, because for now, survival matters more. And while he focuses on shopping, Hyuna notices him and waves, trying to call him over, thinking he simply didn't notice her, and Han Feng casually responds with fake warmth, saying she looked so beautiful that he momentarily got lost staring, causing her to blush slightly as she praises his sweet words and uses the chance to invite him shopping together. Yet he shows zero interest and walks past her as if she has no value at all, leaving her stunned as her expression goes completely blank from the sudden reality check, because Han Feng now understands everything clearly, that she only wanted to turn him into her personal wallet, and this time he refuses to live as anyone's loyal dog, especially not in this new life. And soon, he reaches Waldemar Plaza, the most fully stocked supermarket in the region, a place that in his past life was mysteriously emptied in a single night after the Arctic apocalypse began, with no one ever discovering who took everything. But now his goal is simple, to stock as much as possible using a survival guide list he already found online containing food, winter clothes, medicine, daily necessities, fuel, and many other useful items. Yet once the list is ready, another problem appears, because he has no money at all, leaving him stressed until suddenly a message pops up on his phone stating he is eligible for a loan of 170,000 rupees, making him feel as if he just won the lottery. And an idea strikes instantly as he uses every available loan app, borrowing from all of them without hesitation, because honestly, who repays loans during an apocalypse when the world itself is about to collapse? While on the other side, Hyuna grows increasingly annoyed because Han Feng completely ignored her earlier, her ego unable to accept that her so-called personal ATM dared to reject her, and in her heart she curses him, mocking him for not even owning a car while expecting her kindness, thinking that could never happen. Yet at that exact moment, a vehicle stops in front of her and honks, shocking her when she realizes the driver driver is none other than Hanfeng himself, who steps out casually and says he bought the truck, deliberately making her feel jealous by claiming his father earned a lot of money in America and casually sent cash for him to enjoy life, saying he just dropped them off at the airport. And hearing this, Hyuna relaxes instantly, convincing herself that he ignored her earlier only because he was busy with something important, and feeling slightly guilty, she apologizes, putting on her familiar cute act, complaining softly about how cold he behaved earlier, which makes Hanfeng react strangely, first bluntly calling her foolish, then suddenly pulling her closer and telling her that someone like her could never be abandoned because she is still important to him, all said intentionally to mislead her. And Hyuna instantly feels like she has won the jackpot, her face glowing with confidence as she believes everything is back under her control, once again playing with his emotions, saying she feels the same and suggesting a movie together followed by dinner. Yet Hanfeng interrupts her calmly, saying he has urgent work and begins packing his supplies, claiming he already has too much to handle, leaving her confused about why he bought so many things, to which he casually replies that he just felt like it, then adds that he even bought a gift for her, pushing her deeper into illusion, instantly lifting her mood as she happily returns home believing she will receive it at night, a confident smile on her face as she thinks she outplayed him again, unaware that Hanfeng wears the exact same smile because both believe they are deceiving the other, while in truth Hanfeng will never reveal his supply secret, as that is his greatest weapon for surviving the apocalypse, and when the world sinks into chaos and despair, he will take his revenge fully prepared against the one who killed him and against Hyuna as well, thinking to himself that this time he wants to enjoy the apocalypse, and watching Hyuna's downfall will be deeply satisfying because only 2 weeks remain before the disaster begins, when heavy snowfall will cover the world and temperatures will drop to minus 20 degrees in a single day, then continue falling month by month until reaching minus 70, freezing the entire planet and making it physically impossible to go outside, turning food into the greatest necessity of all, and Hanfeng brings all his supplies back to his apartment, hiding them carefully to avoid suspicion, shifting the riskiest items only at night when no one is around, knowing the biggest impact of the apocalypse will come when extreme cold causes power breakdowns, sending fuel demand skyrocketing. Yet he already stocked a full year's worth of fuel, and since heating systems will shut down after the collapse, he hires a construction crew to install industrial-level heating inside his home, making it fully cold-proof, while also preparing a hidden secret room to protect his supplies and inventory, ensuring that even if someone enters his apartment, they will never find it. And by the time all preparations are complete, July 14th arrives, leaving just 1 day before the apocalypse, and with everything finally set, the last item on his checklist is studying his own powers because he knows supplies alone cannot save him. And if he wants to survive the cold, he must understand his abilities, as they are his final hope. And in front of him lie the soybeans he personally grew, using his power, now ready for testing, though he still doesn't know what triggers his ability. Yet he gathers courage, fills a large spoon, and hopes at least the food is safe to eat. And after finishing half the plate with no negative effects, he confirms he can safely produce and consume food using his power, though the real issue remains that he cannot activate it at will. Having only tested soybeans so far, and searching the fridge for more vegetables, he notices evening slowly replacing daylight, time slipping away, until his eyes gradually open and he feels dizzy and weak, suspecting he may have fainted, broccoli in his hand and vegetables scattered everywhere, his mind barely functioning as exhaustion from using his power overwhelms him, and eating the same soybeans again, he mutters that at least he learned something new. Then the story flashes back to what happened just before he lost consciousness, when he ordered various items to test his ability on different plants, and things became strange because some plants showed no reaction at all. Others, especially seeds, instantly evolved into proper plants just like the soybeans, and a third result appears when some items explode in his hand, turning into coal-like remains, confusing him at first but soon revealing usefulness because this coal can later be stored for heating, meaning he accidentally discovered a vital survival resource, and excited he continues experimenting, failing at first, then succeeding once he concentrates properly, though the energy loss becomes so extreme that he collapses unconscious again, and returning to the present he feels confused about why his power works sometimes and fails at others, struggling to understand which plants respond and which do not, until one realization becomes clear that his ability is linked to his inner desire, leading him to try meditation to connect mind and body with nature, and when he opens his eyes, his hand glows green again, confirming his theory, after which he tests his ability on a piece of meat, hoping it might work beyond plants, yet the result disappoints him as nothing happens, forcing him to accept that he may have to rely on plants for life until he remembers seeing 2 colors during meditation, red and green, and this time he focuses deeply on the red power, and suddenly his hand glows crimson as the meat reacts, mutating into a grotesque spiked blob that barely looks edible, making him uneasy as he inspects it, realizing it wasn't cooked but reversed and broken down, leading him to finally understand that green accelerates evolution while red reverses form. And when he combines both powers, a yellow light erupts, doubling the meat's size into an extremely fresh piece unlike anything he has ever seen, thrilling him until the next test fails completely, plunging everything into darkness. And though frustrated frustrated at first, he calms himself, realizing he still has time and that discovering this much in one day is already a miracle, believing that once he masters this power, he could stand at the top of the world until an urgent thought strikes him, that food alone will not save his life, and to protect himself from others, he will need weapons too. And the moment that thought crosses his mind, he realizes that the apocalypse has already begun. As snow starts falling outside, snow has already begun falling from the sky, exactly the same way it did in his previous life, and even though it is still July, heavy snowfall is covering the entire world. Yet Han Feng still forces himself to step outside because before the temperature drops to minus 45 degrees, he knows he must get a gun no matter what. The problem being that guns are illegal in his country, and while he is stuck in that thought, his eyes land on a man with a flashy street hairstyle shouting loudly in public, claiming he is Lao Wang's younger brother and a member of the gang Lita group, acting like a typical spoiled guy who lives off his elder brother's money. And as Han Feng watches him, he feels like he has seen this man before, noticing his terrible fashion sense. And the funniest part is that people in the neighborhood have already given him a nickname, calling him Homeless Joe, even though his real name is Lizzie, someone who lives in the same area as Han Feng, a so-called contractor who pretends to be well-connected, always surrounded by people asking what's going on while he brags about being busy on huge projects with his brother, when in reality he has no real work at all and only pretends to handle million-dollar contracts on his phone. And seeing this, Han Feng begins wondering if this fool might actually help him get a weapon, so he casually walks up, greets him warmly, and acts as if they are old friends, even though the truth is Homeless Joe has never seen him in his life. And Han Feng introduces himself using a different name, behaving like they are longtime buddies, carefully targeting Joe's ego, and as expected, the foolish man falls straight into the trap, apologizing and saying he couldn't remember him because work pressure has been too heavy lately. And while discreetly scanning the surroundings, Han Feng quietly explains his situation to him. After hearing everything, Joe becomes slightly shocked and asks why he needs a gun and how serious the issue is, and for a moment Han Feng goes silent because he has no solid excuse ready when the yellow-haired thug suddenly warns him that guns are no joke and are illegal in the country, admitting there is a source but not something he would risk for just anyone. So Han Feng calmly explains that he only wants it for self-protection because some people are after him, then smoothly spins a completely fake story, saying that one day while riding his bike, another man spat in his face for no reason, which made him furious. So he beat the man publicly and left him there, but that man threatened revenge and returned with a gang the next day, humiliating him badly. And since then, he has felt he needs a proper self-defense weapon. And hearing this, Homeless Joe becomes fully emotional, saying that spitting crosses the line, agreeing that such people deserve punishment, completely missing the real point of the story, yet still placing a hand on Han Feng's shoulder like a guardian angel and promising he will talk to his brother and arrange a weapon, which finally brings some relief to Han Feng's face. And Joe suggests going to meet his brother, known as Boss, and since his luxury car is in service, Han Feng immediately says he has a vehicle, and when they get inside his SUV, Joe is shocked and asks how much it cost, to which Han Feng casually replies 7 lakh, saying it was a great deal, and Joe instantly starts taking photos like an Instagram model, even writing captions as if the car belongs to him. And soon they arrive outside a hotel where several gang members are warming themselves near a fire, discussing how strange it is for snowfall to happen in July. And when Han Feng's car stops, Joe steps out wearing a proud expression, while the gang members cannot believe he owns such an SUV, and Joe shamelessly claims he bought it with his own money, making Han Feng think this man's confidence level is unreal. And then Joe takes Han Feng to meet the boss, whose body is fully covered in tattoos just as expected, and the moment the boss sees his brother, he angrily tells him to leave, causing Joe to panic and push Han Feng forward, saying he is his friend and came because he needs a gun, which shocks the boss at first before he shoots Han Feng a deadly glare, making him nervous. And the boss gets annoyed that they traveled so far just for a useless gun when he has more important matters, yet still orders one of his men to bring a handgun, which is tossed toward Han Feng and costs only 6,000. But Han Feng is not satisfied with a small pistol, because this time he wants to go full John Wick mode and boldly demands a sniper rifle with a large scope, leaving the boss stunned, unable to believe this kid is asking for a sniper, and angrily humiliating him by asking who he thinks he is and whether this is a shopping mall, his ego clearly overflowing. But before things escalate, Joe jumps in with another fake emotional story, claiming Han Feng's wife cheated on him 3 times and he unknowingly raised 3 illegitimate children, and now that he knows the truth, he wants revenge. And by the time the story ends, the boss is fully fired up emotionally, reacting as if Han Feng suffered a real personal tragedy, and moved by this dramatic nonsense, he finally approves the sniper request, saying it will take 2 or 3 days to arrange, which makes Han Feng relieved that at least something worked. And the boss also orders his subordinate Chang Ji to prepare a semi-auto rifle, even gifting a handgun for free out of sympathy, making Han Feng genuinely surprised at such a deal. And while thanking them, he casually shares important information, saying his government contacts warned him that the weather will get much worse, meaning they should gather supplies quickly or everything will collapse. And this time his serious expression makes the warning Feng feel heavy, causing the boss to agree, ending the meeting. And on the way back, Joe proudly praises himself, claiming he handled the meeting like a pro dealer and that his brother was in a good mood, saying Han Feng must be lucky. And Han Feng thanks him and offers cigarettes as a gift, which Joe pretends to refuse before demanding 8 cartons, while he continues talking nonsense. Han Feng quietly focuses on his mental checklist, realizing he now has almost everything needed for the apocalypse, with only one thing left: mastering his powers. Because if he can use the red power to create food, survival will become easy. And as he walks confidently following his plan, suddenly he slips in front of Joe and falls hard, twisting his leg badly, pain shooting through his body as he trembles, suspecting a fracture, and he begs Joe to take him to the hospital. But Joe awkwardly admits he doesn't even have a license, so he tries to support him on foot, only making the pain worse, forcing Han Feng to call a taxi out of sheer humiliation. And at the hospital, the reception area is packed with patients, where head nurse Jiyeon is working the night shift, noticing the snow growing heavier every hour, until an emergency call pulls her to the main hall due to staff shortage. And sadly, Han Feng's leg is indeed fractured, leaving him stuck there for an hour waiting for medicine, realizing that despite planning everything, a single accident has disrupted it all. And after Joe leaves pretending to be busy, Han Feng finds himself once again in a situation similar to his past life, except now it's worse because his leg is broken, the hospital overflowing with patients due to sudden climate change, making it obvious the outside world will collapse within weeks. And while waiting in a long medicine line, he notices a beautiful head nurse checking patients' pulses with calm professionalism, managing the chaos so well that even doctors rely on her, shocking Han Feng as he wonders how someone so young became head nurse. And seeing how kindly she treats patients, combined with model-like looks, makes his heart waver again, though this time quietly. And when an old man calls her complaining of back pain, she goes to help him gently, explaining staff shortage may cause delay, yet the man's intentions are filthy, secretly turning on his phone camera and sliding it between her legs while she is busy, unaware of his actions, until he suddenly grabs her hand. And when she calmly tells him doctors are coming, he becomes more disgusting and reaches where he shouldn't. And before he can do anything worse, Han Feng swings his crutch straight into the man's face, knocking him to the ground, confusing the nurse, who asks if he is okay, while Han Feng pretends innocence, apologizing and saying he doesn't know how to use the stick, then cleverly checks the old man's phone. And when the man shouts for it back, Han Feng sees the photos in the gallery, his anger exploding as he realizes the man touched her and took pictures, immediately threatening police action and warning that if he ever does this again, he will send him to jail and expose him online, forcing the old man to flee at full speed despite claiming back pain moments earlier, leaving the nurse shocked at how fast he ran. And Han Feng quietly shows her the photo and explains the man's behavior felt wrong from the start, offering to report it and handing over the phone for legal action, which she accepts with a grateful smile, then seriously asks whether his leg is actually fractured or already healed, making Han Feng suddenly remember that yes, he really did break his leg, and the adrenaline from protecting her had briefly made him forget the pain. He had forgotten everything in that rush, and now that the adrenaline has faded, the real pain comes crashing back, making him grit his teeth. And a short while later, the nurse carefully wraps his fracture properly, easing the pain enough that he can finally breathe again, and she thanks him sincerely, promising that from now on she will never let anyone take advantage of her like that again. Yet just then, Han Feng's foot accidentally brushes against her body, and for a split second, his mind fills with the awkward thought that maybe she still doesn't fully understand what just happened. But before anything more can follow, another emergency call comes in for her, pulling her away to handle more duties, and slightly nervous, she rushes off, reminding Han Feng to come back for a checkup in a week, while deep down he knows the truth is different, because in a week, the apocalypse will already be raging and the world will be collapsing, meaning he may never see her again. And carrying that heavy thought, he leaves the hospital, and the very next day the weather completely breaks down, with news channels around the world repeating the same warning that temperatures have dropped to dangerous levels, even hot countries like Dubai and Egypt seeing snowfall, something that feels deeply wrong. And climate experts from 46 countries rush to an emergency meeting in Russia to figure out what is happening, claiming it is just a temporary cold wave and reassuring people that things will return to normal in a few days, while still issuing strict warnings to stay indoors and keep warm. Yet Han Feng feels no panic at all, calmly relaxing in his fully upgraded, well-protected room with the heater running, watching the news insist everything will be fine, even though he knows it is all a lie meant to keep the public calm, thinking bitterly how in his previous life he also believed this nonsense and waited foolishly for warmth to return. But this time everything is different, because he is fully prepared, with supplies stocked and his heating system running at full power, feeling that for now everything is under his control. Yet the building's group chat explodes into chaos, residents panicking and typing frantically about how the cold has become unbearable and heaters have stopped working. And suddenly, an anonymous user posts a strange message claiming the Ice Age apocalypse has begun, that this snowstorm is not normal but a natural disaster rising from within the earth itself. And reading this, Han Feng is shocked, because this knowledge should belong only to him, making him wonder if this person is not ordinary, perhaps even someone who reincarnated like him. And realizing this cannot be ignored because if he is the main character, how could someone else know the future? And the once peaceful housing complex now feels like an asylum. Residents tagging property management nonstop, demanding action as the storm worsens, complaints piling up endlessly, turning the chat into pure noise, with angry messages flooding in about groceries, rent, and useless services, while property management can only apologize repeatedly, unable to calm anyone down. And through all this, Han Feng silently observes, growing annoyed at the stupidity, thinking the building owner isn't a magician who can remove a snowstorm. Yet among the chaos, one resident, James Dunn, speaks calmly, saying, "Fighting the storm is pointless and people should help each other," instead of arguing, reminding them that natural disasters aren't controlled by shouting at management. But his mature attitude only makes others target him, accusing him of being management's puppet. And though he explains he's just stating reality, no one listens, insisting snow must be cleared so they can buy groceries. And as he tries again to reason that even if snow is cleared, there's no guarantee roads will be safe, Han Feng's expression shifts as he recognizes this so-called wise leader from his past, and his eyes reveal there is old history between them, when suddenly another resident barges into the chat aggressively, declaring that if people want food, they must go clear the roads themselves because complaining won't melt snow, then logs out, and one by one others step forward agreeing to help, even delicate-looking girls willing to get their hands dirty. And then Hyuna appears, volunteering to clear snow, confusing Han Feng at first, until it becomes clear her plan is just to attract attention, wanting thirsty men to stop her from working and fuss over her, and as soon as she puts on a little act, it works, dumping all the labor onto others like she always does. And disgusted Han Feng logs out of the chat, already fed up, especially since Hyuna never fails to ruin his mood, and right then, his phone buzzes with her message, because she believes he will obey her every word, ordering him to bring her food like a servant and sending a vulgar picture of her bare legs and body fully on display to trap him, making Han Feng almost impressed, thinking her effort deserves a perfect score even in this freezing storm. Yet with his fractured leg, he has no intention of indulging, so he replies with a mocking joke that instantly kills her mood. And exactly as expected, his reply works, leaving her furious enough to want to crush his face. And now it is the third day since the storm began, temperatures already below -20. Yet this is only the beginning, with the city's central heating still active, people living casually, internet working, everyone going about daily routines, and Han Feng scrolling TikTok like a bored teenager, watching random short videos until he grows tired, realizing loneliness eats away at a person from inside, especially now that his broken leg has nearly immobilized him, and full recovery will take months, trapping him alone. And as he mindlessly scrolls, a random news clip appears showing a man with self-healing powers, doctors explaining he fell from the 15th floor with shattered bones and damaged organs, yet regenerated shortly after. And seeing this reminds Han Feng of his own powers, prompting him to activate his green ability and try healing his fractured leg. But the green light fades with no effect, and even after trying again, nothing happens, leaving him disappointed and thinking it was all just a show, collapsing onto the sofa feeling depressed, until hours later he falls asleep, dreaming he's dressed in tribal clothes riding a massive goat with an entire goat army following behind, majestic. From afar, until the dream turns absurd as a goat suddenly stops, sending him flying forward, breaking his leg again even in the dream. Then another goat starts licking his leg, grossing him out enough to push it away. But the goat gets angry, wraps its long tongue around his leg, and lifts it into the air, and to his shock, green power activates where the tongue is wrapped, healing him. And at that moment, Han Feng jolts awake, drenched in sweat, shaken by the bizarre dream, only to notice green light glowing on his real leg, signs of healing clearly visible, and carefully removing the bandage, he places his foot on the floor, shocked to feel no pain at all, realizing the green power truly healed him, but only while he was asleep. And to confirm whether it truly works, he grabs a sharp knife and decides to test it on himself, hands trembling as he makes a small cut on his finger, waiting to see if healing triggers again, while outside his neighbors are channeling their anger into real work, clearing snow together at the main gate, motivated by John's speech, praising an old man for working the hardest, who in turn praises the twins. And then the familiar nurse Jinyan appears, clearly exhausted and struggling in the storm, prompting the twins to help her. And as John warns snowfall is worsening and they must hurry with groceries, the old man hesitantly mentions a rumor about a resident moving supplies with a small truck days ago, including gas tanks and a fireplace, sounding like full winter survival prep in July. And before the discussion deepens, another resident jumps in, clearly interested in this mysterious man who prepared early, only to be hit by a snowball from Lewin, snapping him back to work. And as the main path is cleared, Jinyan grows excited about grocery shopping, while the old man quietly asks John if that resident knew the storm was coming. And John cleverly dodges the question, saying there's no need to worry, that the storm will calm down in a few days and everything will soon return to how it was before, that everything would return to normal. And even if bad luck caused the storm not to stop, then at least it was good that someone among them had already stocked everything in advance and could help others. So in that sense, it was actually good news and nothing to worry about. And as everyone headed toward the grocery store, the snowfall suddenly grew heavier, forcing them to walk faster, while on the other side, our lazy boy Hanfeng was still sleeping peacefully in his cozy apartment until a knock at the door disturbed his rest and a familiar voice called out to him, making him get up and open the door, only to find Li standing there holding the items Hanfeng had ordered from Boss Liu, the same gift Boss Liu had promised, because Hanfeng's information had helped them, and Li had personally delivered it since he had already stocked enough supplies and didn't need to run around the city like everyone else. Yet Hanfeng still thanked him sincerely for coming in such terrible weather, and Li then shared another interesting piece of information, saying rumors were spreading that an unknown person had emptied an entire supermarket in the Eastern District overnight, and when Boss Liu's gang cleared the snow and reached the place, the store was completely empty, which shocked Hanfeng, because how could a massive supermarket be cleared in one night? But Li wasn't lying. It had really happened, and that made Hanfeng realize something strange was happening this time, something that never occurred in his previous life. Maybe he wasn't the only one who gained powers, maybe others had reincarnated too, and before he could think further, Li interrupted him, telling him to wear warm clothes and take care of himself before saying goodbye and leaving. And now alone, Hanfeng finally had space to analyze everything, wondering who could be behind last night's incident and how a single person could empty a supermarket overnight, until one theory made sense. Someone might possess superpowers like those in novels and comics, the kind that allow unlimited storage in a subspace, and the question was whether such people could really exist. But the answer came easily, because if he himself had powers, then others could too, a reality that felt deeply unsettling, meaning he could no longer waste time. He needed to properly study his abilities so that if he ever faced another superhuman, he wouldn't be helpless. And to do that, he opened his diary and began writing everything he had learned so far, realizing his power reacted with food, whether plants or meat, allowing him to grow food, increase its size, or even fry it. Though the taste was terrible, it still worked. Yet he also discovered clear limits, because each item had a different success rate and repeated use reduced effectiveness, like soybeans, which only had a 10% chance of growing while the rest turned bad, with meat having an even lower success rate. And as he struggled to understand the logic, one soybean suddenly exploded in his hand with green smoke and turned into a foul-smelling rotten stone, and these constant failures frustrated him deeply, the failure rate being far too high. So he decided to stop wasting time and begin focused training, knowing practice was the only way to master any skill, and he kept working non-stop until night, when finally his effort paid off and a fresh living soybean plant appeared in his hand. Something far from easy, his whole body drenched in sweat as if he himself had become a heater. But in return, he made a major discovery, understanding some rules behind his power that could improve success rate, realizing green energy wasn't uniform and had to be applied for different durations depending on nutrition level, just like some plants grow quickly while others take years. And if he used too little or too much energy, the product failed and turned into stone, meaning every item had a specific cooking time. And that suddenly reminded him of an old rhythm dance game where perfect timing mattered, making him think the green energy might also require precise up-down control like a rhythm pattern, gradually increasing power until it reached the exact point needed. And once he grasped this, every soybean began growing properly, and after mastering plants, he moved on to meat, which behaved very differently because even a tiny mistake turned it into black sludge. Yet he believed the rules should still be similar, starting by figuring out how much energy meat required, but the chicken leg exploded again into black liquid, showing this would take far more time, and he kept failing again and again as chicken legs burst one after another, pushing his patience to the limit until he cursed loudly in frustration, exhausted by the skill's difficulty. But Hanfeng wasn't someone who gave up, and while the snowfall outside grew heavier and the temperature dropped further, he continued practicing relentlessly, his kitchen covered in signs of failure, until only one chicken leg remained, and now completely drained. He tried once more without hope, expression empty, repeating the same energy rhythm like a complex mini-game, restarting each time he failed, stress crushing down on him, until at last he succeeded and the chicken leg expanded into a dinosaur-sized piece of meat, making him smile faintly and mutter that at least this much was deserved, before collapsing in exhaustion, finally having found the method to use his power on meat. While outside, the weather worsened daily, and news reported July 17th as the third day of the snowstorm with identical conditions nationwide, making it feel like humanity was facing a disaster that appears once every 1,000 years and wipes out 90% of life. As authorities struggled to maintain basic needs, and hearing the same warnings again the next morning, Hanfeng felt numb because he had heard all this before in his past life. The snow warnings, fake promises, claims that transport and power were damaged, followed by assurances everything would recover, ending with orders to stay indoors. None of it was new to him when suddenly his phone buzzed with notifications from the apartment group chat, pulling him back in as residents argued again, some trusting rescue teams while others prepared survival plans, until one avatar stood out, Uncle Leo, bluntly questioning whether anyone truly believed the TV, saying trusting official news was foolish because if things were under control, rescue teams would already be there, then revealing a shocking rumor from old friends that the government had begun assembling armored vehicles, tanks, and heavy weapons in the capital, possibly preparing for war against an unknown enemy, silencing the entire chat as fear spread, people asking if they were all going to die. While Hanfeng felt stunned by this change because he had also vaguely heard about war in his past life. And then Mr. Zhang stepped in calmly, saying if Uncle Leo was right, they must start survival planning now, explaining that some residents were already out of supplies and government help was uncertain, urging everyone to help one another and promising to donate half his own supplies, causing residents to quietly discuss his proposal, with one man agreeing completely and pledging donations while dragging Hyuna into it. And because that man Wakanyu had been rejected by her before, he tried to embarrass her publicly, prompting Hyuna to switch into her usual innocent girl act, apologizing sweetly and claiming she had nothing extra to give, instantly winning sympathy from her fan club and damaging the donation momentum. Though gradually, donations still began coming in as food, clothes, and medicine piled up, leading Mr. Zhang to thank everyone and form an interim emergency committee for planning and distribution, naturally placing himself as leader, which made Hanfeng laugh silently because he had seen this exact scene in his first life, knowing this committee would later become a ration-stealing scam. And now on July 19th, the 5th day of the apocalypse, the temperature had dropped to -40 and even the building's central heating finally shut down, plunging residents into panic as they searched for ways to stay warm, lighting small fires inside their homes just like before. While Hanfeng remained calm because he had plenty of charcoal from failed experiments fueling his fireplace, sipping cold soda beside a slice of strawberry cake while playing single-player games without caring about the world, until a sudden call interrupted him. The Block A, in charge, asking for volunteers to clear roads and gather people in the basement parking. And though Hanfeng wanted to curse him, he stayed silent, knowing it wasn't the right time to clash with neighbors because if they discovered his secret supplies, chaos would erupt. So he headed to the lobby, where everyone realized the building was completely trapped by snow, volunteers furious that the cleared path was buried again, and when they forced the door open, a massive wave of snow blasted inside, turning the lobby into a storm as freezing wind cut into their skin, making Hanfeng regret leaving his sofa, until they finally accepted that going outside was impossible, except for one idiot who insisted otherwise. And as expected, that idiot appeared, Homeless Joe, Brother Lee, lecturing everyone about courage, ignoring their warnings before finishing a cigarette and charging into the storm like a bulldozer, punching snow dramatically until he vanished beneath it. Moments later, faint cries emerged, and everyone dragged him out blue-faced and freezing, forcing them to shut the gate and retreat to the underground parking, where conditions were slightly better. And as Mr. Zhang declared operations would move there, Hanfeng finally saw him in person, recognizing the same man who would later lead the scam committee, smiling sweetly while binding people with false unity, thanking donors as everyone felt hopeful, though Hanfeng alone knew the truth. And as the storm worsened, Brother Lee said goodbye and left when Hanfeng suddenly noticed a familiar face, the nurse from the hospital, wearing a cute winter jacket and carrying boxes through the crowd, stumbling into people until Hanfeng caught her just in time along with the boxes, earning her thanks as she recognized him, then froze, remembering his leg fracture and questioning how he could move so well, making him nervously lie that he's always healed fast. And thankfully, she believed him, even impressed, allowing him to help carry the boxes, which turned out to be heavy medical supplies she was donating. And though she said she could manage alone, Hanfeng insisted, already lost in her kindness and beauty, joking lightly as they walked, until she admitted she was stronger than most guys. And when he casually asked if she'd always been that strong, her expression grew uneasy, hinting at a reason she wasn't ready to share, apologizing softly and saying she needed more time before talking about it. So friend, if you enjoy this apocalypse manhwa and want next part quickly, so don't forget to like and subscribe the channel now.